Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome to Canada Today Youth Edition. This is your host, Brother Muhammad Maxwell Hassan. And now, we're leading up. We're leading up to Ramadan. We're leading up to the blessed month of Ramadan. And with that time, subhanAllah, lots of things can really come awry. And things can really get out of shape very quickly. You see, subhanAllah, at the end of the day, when it comes to Ramadan, it's all about preparation. For example, when you imagine you're about to go to the Olympics. You're an Olympic athlete. What do? Do you just hang out and hope and you just kind of, wing it? Or do you prepare for it? I would assume that you would prepare for the Olympics. So similarly, as Muslims, this special month-long event or this blessed month is something that we can take as an opportunity for us to grow and an opportunity for us to prepare. And with that, it all starts up here with the mindset. If we go into this Ramadan with a brand new mindset, with a mindset that's all about productivity and amazing ways that we can kind of sort out the holes in our lives, I think you'll see that you will take out all the benefits and extract the juice of Ramadan much more than if we didn't make those preparations. And so with us here today, we got two very amazing co-guests here. They've been with us here before, so it's amazing to have them with us here today. We got Brother Muhammad Sheikh here. He's since 2013, Muhammad has been helping individuals and organizations break through emotional and mental blocks by teaching them how to use their unconscious mind and how to activate their heart. It's all about the how. To produce more resourceful and desired states and behaviors. While many talk about the importance of having access to resourceful internal states such as confidence, assertiveness, that's a little sneak peek for our co-guest here, gratitude, love, etc., few actually teach how to access such states. Muhammad's approach is all about teaching you the methodology, the step-by-step recipe, if you will, to achieving desired states and results. And mashallah, it's going to be really cool to get this kind of mindset for Ramadan in that context. So wonderful having you with us here today, Muhammad Sheikh. It's amazing having you with us. And with us as well is Sister Saba. Mashallah, she's the child and youth counselor, and she was usually sick. A fun fact, I guess I don't know how fun this is, but she was usually sick as a baby and a child. But she grew up around family and friends with differing abilities, medical conditions, mental health concerns, and the ability to negatively judge others on demand. Okay, this pushed her though. Having said that, this pushed her to help others in need. She completed her honors Bachelor of Science in Disability Studies and Psychology, Masters of Arts in Child Studies, and a clinical diploma in Child and Youth Care. However, she would love to learn, fun fact as well. Fun fact number 2, she would love to learn how to ride a motorcycle and skydive one day, but speed makes her sick to her stomach and heights scare her. So the mind is not something, it's no stranger to Sister Saba, but awesome again having you join us here today in this conversation, especially in the context of Ramadan. So let me continue with you, Sister Saba, because with Ramadan, this isn't the first time that we're going through a lockdown Ramadan, so to speak, at least in this part of the world. Masajids, unfortunately, are not going to be open to full capacity, and we're not going to be able to enjoy what we, quote unquote, used to enjoy, or the things that we took for granted, so to speak. Now, if I can kindly ask from, just to kind of get, paint a picture right from the get-go, what would you say based on, it's almost been a year now or more, Muslim youth looking at Ramadan in the context of COVID-19? Any thoughts currently in terms of the mindset as how Muslim youth look at Ramadan?
Assalamu alaikum. I hope everyone's doing well. It's been a tough year, and no one is a stranger to that. Usually, if, let's say, there was no COVID-19, even with youth, there's always been that mindset of community and belonging, and, you look forward to certain things, like being able to spend time alone or with family, whether you are praying or just enjoying the festivities. But now, given the isolation, I think that piece is missing, and people starting to notice now that there's so many things to look forward to, but oh yeah, I can't do that because, there's a stay-at-home order, or depending on where you live, you have to isolate, or if you've been traveling, you can't see family. So that is a bit tough right now. That there's no sense of community because the physical piece is missing.
I see. Good point. So like the sense of community, and it just goes to show that sometimes when it comes to the community, there's some things that we may have taken for granted. So I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. So if I take it to you, Brother Muhammad, talk to us, man. What have you noticed? What are some things that you've seen, observations in terms of like the Ramadan mindset, in terms of how Muslim youth look at Ramadan, particularly these days?
Yeah, so I mean, part of me just wants to say I'm a little bit out of touch. I mean, let's ask the youth. So, for those of you youth that are watching this, whether you're watching it live or you're watching it on the replay, put it down in the comments because I can go and I can hallucinate what it's like for the youth, but I'd rather kind of really hear it from you. I think that's the most honest answer. But no, generally, of course, this is a time where, where we've got the whole crowd that we're excited for Ramadan. At the same time, it's like, oh my God, Ramadan's coming up. We're going to be fasting again too. So it really depends on what your relationship is. So I think I'm personally just more curious about hearing from the youth. That's my answer.
Of course, of course. Like this is a voice for the voiceless, for those, and especially for those. So I hear you loud and clear. Just to kind of maybe frame it up in a way that, of course, we don't want to paint everyone with the same brush. If there are some common trends, things that we could articulate, and things of that nature. Sometimes, like I hear you. So that's one interesting dichotomy. You have maybe some youth who are really stoked and they're super excited and they're like, I can't wait for Ramadan. And then you got the other crowd that just, it's Ramadan again. Oh, great. 17 hours worth of fasting. So maybe is that fair to say that maybe on one camp, not necessarily, and it all depends on that relation, and is there anything, brother, if I can kindly ask specifically, I know like there are some general trends or things of that nature in terms of observations of how Muslim youth look at it. But with COVID, was there anything like Sister Saba was talking about how they missed a lot of the community feel? Is there anything that you've noticed as something popped up particularly in this context, or is it?
Yeah, I think that's exactly. I think Saba said it all because this is that opportunity where even if you're not regular to the masjid, but we get to go to the masjid, during Ramadan, and this is now the second year in a row. So it's not so much as an observation as it is perhaps an add-on to what Saba said, and maybe some just general advice to the heart is to take that lack of connection to the masjid and really try to create that sense of community in our own houses, in our own families too. Like, even as corny and as cheesy as it sounds, but doing like a Zoom iftar, one of these, in a couple nights with just, different family members, if you have relatives that obviously don't live in the same house as you, but something like that, just to kind of get that community feel that you would otherwise have in the masjid. But, basically do the best that we can.
It's funny that you mentioned that, subhanAllah, because that's true. There's a certain crowd or segment of our Muslim brothers and sisters out there that like the only chance that they really had with, or that connection, that string that they had to the masjid was during Ramadan, and now this is taken away. So now could this be a turning point where you turn your own house into a masajid, or is it even more of or not, I don't want to say opportunity, but even more of a reason to say, oh, distance yourself further and further and further. Man, we're gonna unpack a little bit more of this, but I want to take it to you, Sister Saba, though, because Ramadan, people say that a lot of times Ramadan is it's all about taqwa, gaining consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the moments where, hey, if you've been involved with certain things that explicitly are not very good or healthy for you, to kind of abstain from that. Now, I think the $1 million question for a lot of folks is, can people change? And in particular, when it comes to Ramadan, is you may have those miraculous moments where someone just does a complete 180, or you have someone who they've never prayed at all in their life, suddenly they just become super amazing at their prayers, or they've never picked up the Quran, dusted it off, and all of a sudden, I'm curious to ask, in your opinion, maybe from a mindset perspective, why is it so difficult for folks to rewire themselves in a way? Like, if they're so ingrained in their habits, why is it so difficult, especially given the month of Ramadan as being the opportune golden time? Why is it so difficult for some folks to make those changes? Yeah, okay, hold on. Yeah.
There you go. I think that's a good question because, at least for me, when you think of a change that's coming, so say you're getting ready for school's about to start, right? Or you have a new job, or you're moving to a new house, right? So they're called milestones as an example, right? So you have to adjust. You need to make sure you have everything that you need to get there. It's the same thing. Ramadan, rewiring your mindset. Sometimes it's just difficult, at least for me, in my opinion, and what I've heard a lot of youth say for any transitional moments in their life, and maybe that could be applicable here, is because we think there's so much lacking in us, and then we have this whole checklist and we overwhelm ourselves. So instead of focusing on our strengths, like, okay, I do pray 5 times a day. I just need to maybe, add on some, recitation for the Quran. Or, you know what, I pray 3 times a day. Maybe I need to do that 5 times instead. So we focus so much on what we don't have or what we're not doing, and that we just make a checklist and we burden ourselves almost that, oh, wow, I have so much catching up to do. And then the rewiring just is more haywiring at that point because you are overwhelmed. You have so much that you haven't done that you have now catching up. And guess what? You have 30 days to do it. I mean, that's a lot. But if you
Yes.
start out.
Okay. Sister Sabah, you're there? Okay, no worries. But all right, well, no worries. Pardon the technicalities there, but I think we got the gist of what you're saying. I hear you. I like that. What was it? Instead of the rewiring becomes haywiring. Oh man, it becomes haywire. So I like that. It's like a laundry list of things to do. Who likes going through a checklist? Oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to do this. And if you don't make it, and if you don't reach it, then suddenly maybe you feel like you're a failure at that point. Oh, I forgot to read my Quran today. So why should I bother? Is that going to motivate me, or is that going to deter me from continuing? And instead of focusing on the strengths that you mentioned, if we focus on our weaknesses, then that can just be an endless downward spiral. Is that right? Does that capture kind of the gist of why
Yes,
it's difficult? Very cool. Masha, so let me take it to the NLP man himself, Muhammad Sheikh. Talk to us, man. Maybe if you can offer some perspective on this particular component in terms of, behavioral. I know this can give, lecture. This is a life change. It's not going to be a light switch or a light bulb moment, but if you can distill it down to some of the core teachings that that you've learned and the things that you've said, and particularly it'd be awesome if you can put it in the context of Ramadan. Why? Like, what's going on? How come it's so difficult? Even this golden, like, if there was any chance in the world, any time in the world to make a change, this is it, and still people aren't able to make that change. What's going on? What's going on here?
Well, well, first of all, I want to say that I love what Sabah was saying because it is true. Guys, don't set yourself up to fail. One of the fastest ways that someone sets themselves to fail, not only in Ramadan, but just in general in life, is when they have this entire laundry list of things that they're supposed to do. People say, I'm going to do these 10 things today, they get nothing done. And I know, because this is what I do for a living. I help people live life better, right? And I help people, use the power of their mind. It is the folks that we just schedule that one thing per day, right? And we work on that. And even if it's just one thing, even in Ramadan, that is all we need. There is, forgive me, but I know there is one of our classical shayukh who said that one of the signs of our Ramadan being accepted is that the good deeds that we began continues even after Ramadan has finished. But what I actually want to do, and Muhammad, don't take this the wrong way, but I want to bring your attention to the language that you're using in framing the question you just asked. Because as you know, I'm an NLP guy. The L stands for linguistics. As you know, I'm a hypnotist. So I pay very close attention to the use of language. And the biggest hypnosis that we use or we do is the hypnosis we do to ourselves with the language that we use. So when someone asks a question, why is it so difficult to change a habit? We're already setting up a foundation to fail, right? It's because it is presupposing that it is difficult when in fact it's not. I mean, we take the story of Roger Bannister, who is the first man who ran a mile in under 4 minutes. Before his time, the professionals, the experts, medical doctors thought that if a human being ran faster than 4 minutes to run a mile, that the human organs would actually melt. And Roger Bannister was like, yeah, I don't know if that's true. I don't believe that. And he went and broke the record. But the real lesson, the real golden nugget of this story is that once he broke the record and that belief had been shattered, not even a year later, another person broke the record, and then another person, and then another person. So I would like to say, I think a more useful question is, what are some tips on making sure that the habits or the changes that we have in Ramadan stick? I think that's a much more useful question. And to answer that, I would say one, that old rule, I've been hearing it since I was a little kid. It takes 21 days to change a habit. It's absolutely true. If we just have one, maybe two things that we just set our hearts to. Ramadan is the month of the Quran, so let's make it, Quran related. If we just have one thing that we just do consistently every single day, one thing, right, we are setting ourselves up for a much more likelier success, inshallah.
All right, man. Hey, I love these kind of conversations. Hey, it's all good, mashallah. When it comes to about question, I like it how we it's true, because sometimes when it comes to the certain thing, the things that we tell ourselves unconsciously or intentionally, the every word matters, and it reflects a certain thing. So hey, man, I love it. By all means, go out. It's all good, man. And in terms of and in terms of, I guess maybe before we move on to Sister Seba for a moment here, if you can help me out with this particular part, when it comes to, if we were to dive, let's say, into the realm of, how can we make a more productive Ramadan? How can we make things better? That's true. On the one side, like it forces your brain to start looking for solutions. On the other side, though, if we were to ask questions like, oh, how come I can't do this? Or how come I keep failing at that? Is it a way that you seek an answer in, like, you go into the depths of those darkness to seek that answer, to figure out, oh, okay, that's why I can't do it? Or is it a rabbit hole that really leads to more self-destructive things? What would you say? Like, is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a great question, Muhammad. And it is the latter, quite simply,
Yeah.
right? Because look, when we understand the neuroscience of how memory works, the best way to preserve a memory is never to access it, meaning that whenever we go into the past, understand that it is just a version of a version of a version, So it's not actually what happens. The past is gone. It doesn't exist. The only thing that exists about the past is what's in here. It's the story we made of it. So when we go on why did this bad thing happen or how, sure, there's a little bit of usefulness so we can learn the lessons, but really it is very easy to go down that downward spiral. I mean, outside of the concept of Ramadan, I get clients who have spent their entire life trying to figure out what's wrong with them. And in that process, they haven't been living life. So it's the same thing with Ramadan. I think what you asked before, let's just focus on that. How do we really get the most out of Ramadan? That is a far more productive focus. and to that, quite simply, just make it one or two things.
Very cool, very cool. Wow, so it's good to be aware of that. Sister Seba, I know you've been kind of appreciate your patience here just to see how it goes. Now, let's flip the tables a bit. We've been kind of dabbling a bit in the dark side, so to speak, in terms of like how people can get into the depths of their unconscious. Let's flip it around. Let's hear some success stories. It goes off of that story of the runner. I think it was a mile in 4 minutes, right? Like so.
Roger Bannister.
Roger Bannister. So, if I can kindly ask Sister Saba, are there any Ramadan success stories that you could, that you think of fondly? It could be a personal story. It could be a family member. It could be a friend. It could be someone you've seen somewhere where you look at it and you're saying, you know what? Wow, this person actually, really, really took Ramadan and ran with it and made something success. Like maybe they were in a dark place and then they look at Ramadan and then all of a sudden they become in a bright place, or maybe they're already at a good place and they just went to the next level. Do you have any stories out of curiosity that you could share in terms of maximizing the potential of Ramadan, and so that way to get people to get a taste of how blessed this month really is?
Sure thing, yes. I was actually having a conversation about that because, especially for youth these days that feel disconnected with the community. I mean, it's great that we identify a problem that, okay, there's a sense of community that's missing, or amongst other issues perhaps. But then, okay, now what, right? So I figured, okay, let's ask the experts, so to speak. So people that, for example, whether it's medical conditions or whether for any reason before COVID, say they could not go to the mosque, they could not connect with the community even when COVID was not the issue. You know what I mean? If you spoke to someone like that and asked, so hey, how do you go through Ramadan? What do you do? How do you connect to your community or your faith or yourself? What would you suggest? So in those conversations, you find things like, just spending time maybe even with your family, or like Muhammad was mentioning earlier, doing those Zoom calls, especially if it's family that doesn't live with you, or long distance, for example, or overseas. So that really helped me. I felt like, because I'm one of those people that would like to go to the mosque, for example, or connect with the community. But then now that it's a bit tougher, when I turn to my other friends, for example, who stay at home taking care of elderly parents, or they have a health condition and they can't go out anyway, they say, well, it's like any other Ramadan for us, we don't really feel like it's different just because there's COVID. So that's basically what they've said, is that there are other ways to connect and still feel a sense of community. You just have to be a bit creative, I guess, in how you reach out.
I see. So I guess there's some ray of hope there. Like even in spite of all the limitations and things of that nature, you can still find a way to get things going and still maintain that sense of community without losing it entirely. I think there was a phrase that I've come across that says, if you can't have it all, don't leave it all. I remember that. So if you can't have it all, don't leave it all. Don't just drop it at a hat. So I hear you. So very cool. It's good to hear that, those iftar Zoom meetings really worked out in the favor as an example. Great, phenomenal. If I could take it to you, Brother Muhammad here, and maybe if it's tough to find someone in Ramadan, do you have I know maybe keeping anonymous, like if you have a client, somebody that really speaks to you, if you happen to have somebody during Ramadan, awesome. It'd be really great to hear for those success stories. But if not, is there one really groundbreaking moment or someone that you feel that really did that 180, someone who's been just battling this particular battle for a long time, battling their inner demons, and then suddenly
well, I mean, I did have an example, and I'll share that with you, because if we go into folks battling inner demons or trying to make change, I mean, I kind of do that every single day, right, with folks that I work with. So where do I even begin? So alhamdulillah. But what really strikes a nice, feel-good, fuzzy feeling in my heart. And I know, this program is probably international and supposed to be Canada, but just something right here from Canada, from Toronto, is once upon a time, a group of friends got together and said, you know what, for this Ramadan, they became aware of just how much need there is in Mississauga, in the whole food, food donations and the food banks and with Muslim Welfare Center and everything. So a group of friends, they got together once upon a time and said, hey, wouldn't it be cool to maybe create some food packages and start distributing them? And then someone said, well, let's make them really, really nice. Let's make them like gift baskets, right? And then that kind of grew, and then more people got involved. And then the next thing we know, here we are in 2021. And how many volunteers does Project Ramadan have? Right? So
Mm.
it's insane when we look at just these sort of initiatives that start with just, a couple of, a group of friends that just want to do some good work, but you take the barakah that comes from Ramadan and how that just kind of propels forward. And this project now is so huge that it's beyond, and it's bigger than those original people that actually had the initial ideas. In fact, I was talking to someone, it's like, hey, do you know the history of this? And they're like, no, we don't, right? Which is good because those people want to remain anonymous. But alhamdulillah, so that's my feel-good story of Ramadan.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. See, it just goes to show that, when there's a will, there's a way and all that jazz, mashallah. You know what it reminds me of? I want to give a shout out to Brother Tariq that reminds me of the Good Neighbor Project, and especially if I'm not mistaken, I don't know, are you two aware of that by any chance? Like, have you heard of it?
Tell me.
So, mashallah, last year, the whole COVID-19 pandemic hit hard and everybody was scrambling around trying to reorganize themselves, put the pieces together. Especially though, that what was glaringly obvious was that the senior citizen community, it was tough for them to get their groceries, and that's what I believe that's how it started. That's one of the big segments. And so what they did was that the Good Neighbor Project, mashallah, they went out and they had volunteers to actually do the groceries for them, and it's there and until now, it's running strong, and it just goes to show necessity is the birth of innovation, right, or invention. So, I mean, just having said that, it reminds me of where, specifically with this COVID-19 pandemic. I don't know when was your, for your story, how long ago was this particular initiative of the basket? Was it before?
I think it's like the actual origins of Project Ramadan goes back over 10 years.
I see.
Yeah, but I'm not really sure when Project Ramadan became Project Ramadan.
Fair enough. So it's an idea. It's percolated, it's sustained itself, and here we are. Masha, that's a great story to say. Like, hey, look, Ramadan's all about giving. It's not about taking, and so it's wonderful to see how that manifested itself. Sister Seba, out of curiosity, like, does anything like that come to mind? Was there any cool initiatives or anything out there that you really felt, man, these people are really doing amazing stuff here, like especially within the community?
Now that I think about it, like that was one of the ones that came to mind. But now that I think, and I apologize if I'm sidetracked here, because I'm all focused on, okay, now what? We can kind of do that even now. Like if people are starting initiatives where they're dropping off groceries, or if they're doing Project Ramadan, and this is a bit of a reminder of my childhood again. Like back in, if you lived in, like I lived in Oman, my parents are from Pakistan, like anywhere, if, when you have iftar time and then you go drop off dinner to your neighbor or like someone down the street, and then you call them ahead like, hey, don't cook today because I'm going to be sending iftar to you, right? So it kind of reminded me of like no contact delivery options, because really, like, then there's always someone, like kids are running around, you have to go pray. Sometimes, it is really no contact even without the COVID. Like you kind of open the door, grab it from far away, and then they're on their way. So like we can start an initiative and then call it an initiative that was started on this youth edition here, where we're doing no contact deliveries for Ramadan for people, say for example, someone again who's caring for elderly, new moms, new parents, new dads, people that are new to the country who are not quite familiar with where do I get groceries that have relevant items that we eat in Ramadan, for example. So we could just like kind of like we send iftar over to our community, like even our neighbors, if they don't celebrate Ramadan, it's just like, okay, hey, this is what we do. Here you go. So we can start an initiative. I mean, I'm down. What do you guys think?
I don't know about this point, but that's an idea to percolate. But hey, like there's already, if you have a project Ramadan, you got a good neighbor project, man, like push let them do their thing. I hear you loud and clear. Love the energy though. Love the energy. Now, if I can, let me switch gears for another moment here when it comes to this whole mindset. Like that's what the whole topic is here today. And given that you two, you're in the trenches, like you eat, sleep, breathe this kind of stuff in terms of like the mindset and helping folks, get from point A to point B in their life. Let's talk strategies now. If I can kindly ask, like, are some common things that maybe people who aren't aware of, or things that would be useful tools that I don't want to say that's evergreen, but something that people can pick up, or maybe something is aware of. Like Masha, Muhammad Sheikh, he highlighted the importance of the words that you use, the way you phrase it. That is an indicator in and of itself in terms of something maybe deeper. So things like that. Is there any other kind of strategy or useful techniques that would be really useful going into Ramadan? Let me try this, and let's see how. Like Muhammad Sheikh also mentioned about the one goal thing. Is there anything out there that you two would recommend as like a tool, a strategy, something in the mindset given your field? I'll leave it to either one of you to take a stab at it first.
I'll jump in then.
Yeah.
So, it's really interesting. When I got into doing the work that I do, I created a brand called Coach the Mind. And I call myself the mind mechanic. I mean, that's what it says on my license plate of my car, right? And, hypnosis is all about the unconscious mind. But the truth is, and the real truth is, the heart is much more powerful and important when it comes to behavioral change than the mind is. In fact, when you look at the physiology and the anatomy of our body, the brain is connected to the heart through our autonomic nervous system. And while the brain, sure, sends information and communication to our heart, the heart actually sends much more information up to our brain. It's like 80-20 up. The point that I'm getting at is what we found is when it comes to habit change, when it comes to behavioral change, if there is not much emotion in the mixture, you don't really get anything long lasting. I mean, if you think about it, if you think about someone from the negative, I guess, context, someone that gets traumatized, that's an intense spike of emotion. How long does it take for a phobia to set in? It's an instant, right? That is the power of emotions. Everything, I bet, for the two of you here, and of course, for anyone that's listening or watching it on the replay, every memory that you have from childhood always has an emotional component to it. And because that's what really solidifies those neural pathways in our brain, it is always the emotion. So how do I make use of this knowledge? If we approach Ramadan truly with our heart and connect deeply, it is an emotional, we feel it in our body. Whatever we do, I know we'll get like these opportunities to just set up automatic monthly, donations. So we set it and we forget it. That's not going to do anything to our hearts, right? But when we genuinely connect, if we can, where it's possible, and we're doing it actively, and we're getting into the emotion, when we have a conversation through Zoom, whether it's those virtual, like whatever it is that we do, but if we do it from a place genuinely in our heart, and we show up with compassion, gratitude, care, that is going to be so much more meaningful in driving that behavior to becoming an eventual habit, inshallah. So it's all about the heart, actually.
What a twist. I gotta say, man. And then from a mindset now to the heart. Oh, I gotta think of a catchy title now. But man, oh man, that's amazing. SubhanAllah, like when you link emotion to a certain experience, or you link emotion to a certain cause, that and only then, like then and only then will you spur on that. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, if I understand this correctly, is this like where, in down the South, right, in the American context, where they were talking about the kneeling, like where it was the national anthem. On the one side, you have people that say, oh my gosh, this is totally unpatriotic, and how dare you disrespect the flag, and they're really into it, and that's one side. On the other side, some folks who are saying, hey, look, are you blind to the injustices that are going on here and there? Like this kind of rhetoric, is that like the emotion that you're talking about in terms of spurring people on, or is it something?
Well, I don't know too much about that specific example, so I can't really speak intelligently. No, but I'm just talking about any emotion, right? Like if you think about it, if we're excited for something, that's an emotion. We're going to want to do it, right? If you have a genuine why. I mean, the easiest way to explain this is pretty much all good marketers get this. We make all of our behaviors and all of our decisions through emotions. We justify it afterwards with logic, but it's always emotional behaviors, right? And so, if you think about it, you've got a test coming up, and your parents are like, you got to do really well in that test. If you have an emotion that's like, I don't want to, or you could care less about it, do you really think you're going to follow up? Do you really think that behavior is going to show up? But if at the same time you take it on as a challenge and you feel excited and you feel like, yeah, I'm going to prove myself, and you're going to feel really proud once you achieve that mark, then yeah, your behavior is going to follow. So we're just talking about really leveraging the power of emotions behind whatever actions you do. You know what? Said even simply, if you care about it, it'll happen.
If you care about it, it will happen. Mashallah. I want to follow up with you. Remind me about that.
Okay.
Something else about Sister Saba. I want to talk to you, Sister Saba. I want to talk to you about this. You're, mashallah, working day in and day out. You've seen a multitude of different people, and I'm sure you got a lot of tools at your disposal. What are some things that you can say, especially maybe using this in the context of Ramadan? Anything out there that you in particular you would look to and say, you know what, this would be a very, very useful tool for people to get into Ramadan to really get the most out of it?
Sure. So in terms of shifting a mindset to get to a behavior change, so I haven't recently been working. I've been off on maternity leave, but when I was still working with counseling and anytime there's a transition in your life, you look at the aspect of resilience. And I think I mentioned it last time when we spoke in August. Mashallah, that wasn't too long ago. But resilience, it's like a self-belief also that, okay, if I think something will change, then it can change if I focus on it. And just mentioning the positive strengths earlier that we were talking about. So if you make a list of everything, so Ramadan, what does it entail for someone? It's the month of giving. It's the month of connecting with, yourself, your religion, your community. If you write down how those things happen, so if you say, okay, giving, how do I give? I can make donations virtually, or I can do skip the dishes and send dinner over to a friend's house, or it's just that the process kind of stays the same even with COVID, in that the thoughtfulness is there because of the resilience. So if you're going to make it happen, then you're going to make it happen. And that emotion would just be the good feeling you get out of it that Muhammad was mentioning earlier, that good feel you get after doing something that you think you wanted to do. So if you mix the emotion with the resilience piece, that I'm going to get through this, then you're going to find ways on how you will get through it in a creative way rather than how are you not going to get through it. So instead of saying, okay, I'm going to physically have to go to drop this food off, why don't I order skip the dishes instead? So it's a no contact delivery. Or, okay, instead of going to the mosque and putting money in the donation, why don't I do e-transfers to an organization that is helping people put together Ramadan meals, or across nations putting together Ramadan meals elsewhere, if not in Canada. So there's different ways. You just have to maybe take a piece of paper and write down what your goals are, how you would do it, and if it's not attainable because of COVID and distancing, how can you still achieve that same success, like that feeling inside, but just use a different way or strategy to get to it. I think that's how you get there.
Fair enough. So I guess some people see the roses, other people see the thorns, right? So you gotta be able to keep looking at the roses, and whatever target that you're shooting for, just kind of go about it. And if you can just directly, you gotta zigzag a little. Very cool, man. Amazing. Like when it comes to the whole resilience factor, I think that's a very key ingredient to anyone. Now, I'm sure if you look at all the different greats throughout history, resilience definitely in some points in their time, if not all, was a necessary component to their success. If I can circle back to Brother Muhammad about this last point, when it comes to the if you care enough, it will it'll happen. There's this debate, I'm sure, in the psychology world and just in the regular general world. Some people, they think that change comes from within, and then you have that magic light bulb moment, and then all of a sudden I'm starting to do it. Or some people might think that you got to do the behavior, and then you will get that internal change. If I accurately kind of portrayed the conundrum. On the one side, people say change comes from here, from the internal to the external, or you have to kind of do the external to get to the internal. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Like, is meaningful change intrinsic, or is it extrinsic? Or, I mean, how do you go about it in a meaningful way?
So, when you talk, you know how you move your hands when you talk. So do I. Who's moving your hands for you?
Is that a trick question, or here we go?
No, it's not a trick question. It's a pretty straightforward question. Who's moving your hands?
I am.
You are. Is that coming from inside or outside?
Oh my gosh, I haven't thought of it that way. I guess I was thinking about it before I did it. So yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, and so this is my point. I think, again, this is one of those questions, no offense, but whether you are doing the external, it's still you. Right? Whether you're going through the motions and then it becomes something that actually becomes a truth, or whether it becomes a truth and then you follow it up. I mean, that's a chicken or the egg thing, I ordered a chicken and an egg from Amazon. I'll tell you which one comes first. But so I think, in regards to that, it's whatever works. And context is always going to be different. Yeah. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I think that's pretty straightforward. Regardless if you do it from the outside or it's an external behavior or an internal belief, one begets the other as long as it works. And it's different in every case.
I hear you loud and clear. I've just thought of an example that I think might help frame this a bit better. So, sometimes you hear stories of people where they open the Quran, they read an ayah, and it just hits them with 1,000, it just really hits them hard. And they're like, wow, I read this ayah, it's meaningful. They have this internal change, and suddenly they go off and do all these amazing things. On the other side, you may have some people where, let's say they were dragged to a masjid, they were forced or coerced to volunteer, and then through the volunteering, actually plating the foods, actually interacting with the people, then they come to that realization, wait a minute, this is actually good, I enjoy it. So they had to be dragged in first. They kind of had to go through the motions, and then they did that. And then they kind of found that. Other people, they might waiting for that Hollywood moment of that epiphany. So, does that kind of paint more of a picture in terms of because maybe some people are waiting for that epiphany during Ramadan. Well, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted me to be guided, I should be guided. Like, I'll open up the Quran and take my magic finger and place it on this one ayah, and that's that. So, in this case, I guess to have a more...
I got you. Okay, yes. I got you. I get the difference now.
Yeah.
So, great question, right? And I think, forget about listening to Muhammad Sheikh. Let's just listen to, and I think this actually might be a hadith. Maybe you can... I'm not good with, history and stuff, but I remember growing up, with, when you read the Quran, it should move you to tears. And if it doesn't move you to tears, cry anyways. Force yourself to cry, because eventually it'll hit your heart. So I think there definitely is a tradition that, yeah, sure, absolutely. If you read something in the Quran and it just hits you and you're moved so emotionally by it, wonderful. That's fantastic, right? But if you're not, yeah, go through the motions, right? Just go through the motions, because what you're doing is you're creating opportunities now. You're creating opportunities to be one day, in one moment, to be moved at it. It kind of reminds me of Wayne Gretzky's. Do youth even still know who Wayne Gretzky is? That's a question that I would really like to know the answer to as well. But one of the best hockey players, his line is, you will miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So if you aren't being moved, but you're also not creating the opportunities where perhaps you might be moved, well, then you're guaranteed that you won't have that aha moment for sure.
Wow. There you go. That nicely put everything together. So I guess so for the viewers here watching this, and I'm including myself in this conversation, if we sit and just look up at the ceiling and say, you know what, we gotta wait for that. Okay, you're not creating any sort of storm, but maybe, just maybe, by interacting on that in a Zoom meeting, maybe participating in a class, maybe opening up the Quran and just randomly going through it, maybe, just going through that would create the atmosphere or create that opportunity to be moved if it hasn't already been ordained for you to be moved. So amazing stuff, mashallah. Well, I hate to say this. I have to say it, but I hate to say it. Which is like, all good things must come to an end. Mashallah, it's been a phenomenal experience talking about the mind, getting a tour of the mind with you both, mashallah, Sister Sabam and Brother Muhammad. Amazing things. I mean, I hope and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, if there was one thing that was extracted from all this, that it's been worthwhile. But I would be remiss if we didn't take this opportunity to give you both like that curtain call to say if there was one final closing remark in terms of how do you really make the most of this Ramadan. If you have any advice, I'll take it to you, ladies first, Sister Sabah. If there's anything that you would say, like if you knew, like with all the knowledge, all the experience, all the amazing things that you've gone through, and now you want to pass it on, what would you say would be your advice to that brother, to that sister, to that individual who's a youth, who's maybe lost, now COVID, I'm locked up, I'm in this, it's hard, it's difficult, I'm lost, I don't know what to do. What would you say to that individual to really help them get in a very productive frame of mind so that they can really make the most of this Ramadan?
Sure. I would just say, if you really look at it, a lot of people are in this isolation together. And that's not to take away from the fact that some people are more isolated than others are because of the pandemic. But put yourself in a mindset of when you have anything coming up that's life-changing. So again, like I said, if you're about to go on the best trip of your life, the best, change of your life is coming up, you're moving to a new house and you actually wanted to move, or you're moving to another school or going to university, you get nervous, you get anxious, you get excited, and those are all positive, negative emotions and a mix of everything. But just sit down, grab a piece of paper, a pen, just really write down what you were able to do before and what you wish you could do now, and try to find a way to focus on how you can still make that happen. Look at your strengths. Don't get caught up in, oh, so-and-so said this, that people should be doing this in Ramadan, but I can't do this, I can't do that. Don't focus on the negatives, because the world will remind you to do that anyway. Just look at everything you do have and build on that, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is forgiving, and you're really doing this at the end of the day for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not really for others right then and there. So that's the key. So really just look at your strengths, look at what you have, look at what you usually do, and just focus on building on that. Don't compete with someone else or some others, like many other people. Just focus on you, and don't make a checklist out of it. Just self-care, focus on yourself.
Alrighty. Much appreciated. Sharpen those strengths, and not to make a checklist or make a burden on yourself or anyone to really try to, if plan A doesn't work, and then not to beat yourself up over it, just not to be complacent, but at the same time not being overly drilling your own head to the ground, and you know what I mean. So just that negative spiral. Amazing, Sister Saba. Mr. NLP, please talk to us. What would you say be golden advice in terms of how you would encourage the youth to really make the most of the Ramadan? Anything in particular that you would pass on, given your knowledge, your experience, people you've dealt with, things that's worked, what hasn't worked? What would you say to someone to really get in that productive frame of mind entering into Ramadan?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you guys have been really paying attention to me now, and I invite you, if you haven't, to pay attention at this point, because this is the most important thing. It is really that emotion and that connection that we want to have behind every action. So now all of you guys for those of you that have an entire list of all these things that I want to get done, cut that list by like 90%. And for those of you that actually have no list and are just preparing, and Ramadan is just another month, then maybe add one, maybe two, but maybe just one thing to that list, but do it with genuine heart. It is easy to do good deeds, but just kind of check out mentally. The example of this is just setting up a monthly payment option or something. Even if it's $5, yes, it's a good deed and may Allah reward you, but that's not the real point. So often, especially in Ramadan, because it's an opportunity to be reminded about the virtues of charity. We are narrated a hadith, for example, where the Prophet ﷺ says that you shouldn't go to bed with a full stomach, knowing that your neighbor is hungry. So we hear this and we get really, really motivated now, don't we? And we suddenly, check out and whatever we have, and there's a lot of youth, even if it's like $5, we donate that. That's great. No, may Allah reward each and every one of you. But the reality is how many of us even know our neighbors' names or two houses down? In order to know something so fundamentally personal that they're going to bed hungry, it means that you have such trust, such compassion, such a relationship with your neighbors that you would actually know that, because they're not going to admit that to you, right? So whatever it is, that one thing that you choose to focus on, really genuinely care, show up with compassion, show up with gratitude, show up with appreciation, really get your heart into it. And inshallah, that emotion will be something that you will remember, just like all those other emotional memories that you've had from childhood. You will remember for the rest of your life, and it will be a stepping stone for you to carry on that habit beyond Ramadan into, inshallah, next Ramadan as well. So it's all about the heart, baby.
MashaAllah, man. Jazakallah khair, both of you. I really, really appreciate both of you for stopping by. I really appreciate your sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and your humble reflections on this whole thing. May Allah sponsor early Ramadan Mubarak to you both and your families. And although we're in a pandemic, I know it's tough. We've said it over and over again. We're like a broken record, but at the same time, we can make this the best one yet. As they say, with every crisis comes opportunity. Let's make the most of this opportunity. We're in an unprecedented time in human history. If we, we can tell our grandkids, our great grandkids, hey, well, I remember what it was like when everybody was all in isolation and that we didn't have to get up in the morning to actually get to work. I mean, actually we had to not to get to commute. Messed it up there, but it's all good. You know what I mean? But amazing stuff for you both. Thank you so much once again for stopping by. I want to talk to the viewers for a quick moment here about this whole situation. MashaAllah. Ramadan, again, it's like what we said at the very beginning. Ramadan, think of the Olympics. If you're an Olympic athlete, you want to train, you got to compete, you got to get in the right frame of mind. It's not something that you just kind of guess or you just kind of wing it on the day of. Ramadan is all about preparation. So now is the time to prepare. And based on today's episode, it's all about that mindset. If we go into Ramadan with that mindset, we go into it with the expectation that we can make something of ourselves. It doesn't have to be this gigantic Hollywood-esque kind of moment and monumental metamorphosis. It's possible. I'm not saying it's not. It's, a lot of people transform, but it's not the be-all, end-all. Like what was mentioned before, one simple goal of the day is it could be very worthwhile. If we continue and carry forward into Ramadan, after Ramadan, then it could be worthwhile. And just like what Sister Saba is mentioning, just to echo this whole statement, that you don't have to compare someone else's highlight reel to your behind the scenes. Don't compare someone else's highlight reel to your behind the scenes. And with that, we're all a work in progress. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us and accept us all and make this Ramadan the best one yet. Tune in every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here, Canada Today Youth Edition on Muslim Network TV. This is your brother, Muhammad Maxwell Hassan. As always, stay strong, stay stay safe, and stay proud to be Muslims. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.